Alexis Camry Scott was born on May 20th, 1997. In 2017, 20-year-old Alexis left Peoria, Illinois, with 2 males and a female headed to Las Vegas, where she planned to get a job as a dancer. Unfortunately, she unknowingly got involved with a Las Vegas-based gang of human traffickers who kidnapped, drugged, and transported her to Sacramento, California, where she was forced into a sex trafficking ring. She managed to escape, and a woman found her naked and disoriented in the street. She was able to contact her mother, who bought her a bus ticket back to Peoria. All the while, she feared her kidnappers would track her down. Those fears would sadly come true because there were connections in Peoria to one of the guys who had kidnapped her. 3 weeks after arriving back home, on September 23, 2017, Alexis took a cab to a house party in the 100 block of Richmond Avenue sometime after 5 a.m. When the cab driver pulled up, a man greeted her and paid her cab fare. She wouldn't stay long and was allegedly seen walking away from the house at 5:30 a.m., never to be seen again. Her last social media post was at 5:04 a.m. The man who invited her to the party later told police that she actually left the house on multiple occasions and that when he left, she was still in the backyard. 4 days later, when there was still no sign of her, Alexis's mother reported her missing. People who lived in the same neighborhood as the party were interviewed, and vacant homes were searched, but it didn't lead to her whereabouts. 2 months after she disappeared, a search warrant was executed on the home where the party took place. It's unclear what evidence was found at the home, but there was still no sign of Alexis. However, people who lived there did some strange things after Alexis disappeared. They took items from the house to a burn pile, they redid a bedroom of a potential suspect, and they got rid of their washer and dryer. Her family later found out that the owner of the home where the party was knows the man who had trafficked her, and it's believed she was kidnapped and put back in the lifestyle. However, people close to the case have said that most of the physical and circumstantial evidence suggests she was murdered on the day she went missing. Regardless, her family is keeping up hopes that Alexis is still alive, but as of April 2024, she hasn't been found, and this case remains unsolved. Brian Charles was born on July 19, 1977, and grew up in Los Angeles, California. In 1996, he married Kathleen Rundle, and they had 2 children together, a son and a daughter. Unfortunately, the marriage wouldn't last, and in January 2004, they divorced. He then met and married Angela Rinkenberger. Angela was born on February 15, 1986, and graduated from Plainfield South High School in Plainfield, Illinois. In 2009, 23-year-old Angela was planning to return to Joliet Junior College to finish her general education classes and then planned to transfer to the University of St. Francis. She was also working as a studio portrait photographer at Orland Park's JCPenney, while Brian worked as an IT manager. 31-year-old Brian had moved with Angela to a home in Joliet Township, Illinois, with their 2-year-old son, Sean. During that time, he was going through a nasty custody battle with his ex-wife, Kathleen, over their 2 children, Liam and Cora. While the proceedings were ongoing, Kathleen was granted temporary custody. However, Brian ended up with custody after filing an emergency motion against Kathleen, accusing her of moving the children to a house in Painesdale, Michigan that had no heat, electricity, or running water. There, the children were forced to use buckets full of sawdust as toilets and rags instead of toilet paper. Workers with the Michigan Family Services visited the home and saw the rags used as toilet paper lying on the floor. They also witnessed the children sharing a bug-infested box of Rice Krispies cereal with the dog. Plus, the children had also not been bathed in 2 weeks. The custody of the children was then subsequently transferred to Brian. On the other side, Kathleen had accused Brian of abusing her and the children in 2003, but no criminal charges were ever filed against him. At the time, Kathleen was able to get 2 protective orders against Brian. One remained active for a month and a half. The second was dismissed after 3 weeks. A court date for the final judgment of custody was set for March 30th, 2009, but unfortunately, Brian and Angela would never get to hear the final ruling. On Monday, March 2nd, 2009, at about 7 a.m., Brian and Angela's bodies were discovered in their home by none other than his ex, Kathleen. They had both been shot to death, and their 2-year-old son was found in the crib alive and unharmed. Kathleen had allegedly come to the house to get video games for their 2 children who had spent the weekend with her. There are 2 problems with this. First, Kathleen's children said their mother didn't allow them to play video games. Second, it was Monday, so wouldn't her weekend visitation be over? However, I also read that she came by to get DVDs, but that is also a strange thing to need at 7 in the morning. Kathleen said when no one came to the door, she let herself inside and made the discovery. When investigators arrived, they found no signs of forced entry or weapons in the home. Brian had been shot multiple times, while Angela was only shot once. From the details I read, it appears Brian was caught off guard and Angela went running for the bedroom and was shot from behind. 2 days after the murders, investigators executed a search warrant at Kathleen's Joliet home, searching her 1990 Chevrolet station wagon and seizing 8 computers along with other materials. On March 7th, after Brian and Angela's funerals, family members went to their home and found the back window smashed in. The only things missing from the home were a game console and video games. 5 days later, Kathleen was awarded full custody of the children. Kathleen has refused to cooperate with investigators, hired an attorney, and moved to California with the 2 children. It appears her name is now Kathleen Shepard, and she went from California to Portland, Oregon, and now lives in Cleveland, Ohio. Many speculate that Kathleen could be involved and might have hired someone to do it. As for Brian and Angela's son, Sean, he was raised by Angela's parents. I want to note that the information in the case is scarce, and I apologize if any dates or information are wrong. Sadly, as of April 2024, Brian and Angela's murders remain unsolved. Eric Troy Fischer was born on June 23, 1984. In January of 2023, 38-year-old Eric was the father of 2 children living alone in an apartment in Macomb, Illinois. He was described as a wonderful father who loved his kids dearly. On Friday, January 6, he spoke to his girlfriend, Rachel Calfee. During that call, she said he was apologizing and saying things were not going well in his life. After hanging up, she would sadly never speak with him again. According to Rachel, Eric had been going through some stuff that was made worse since it was during the holidays, but she never stated what the specific issues were. On Sunday, January 8th, his ex-wife's mother sent Rachel a message asking if she had heard from him because it was his weekend, but he had sent a text to his ex telling her not to bring the children over. To his ex, it seemed there were also indications that Eric might have been having thoughts of taking his own life. It was so concerning that she called the police and asked for a welfare check. However, when police arrived, Eric was nowhere to be found, and they immediately issued a missing persons report. Investigators then discovered surveillance footage of Eric at a Walmart around noon on January 8th. While there, he purchased a black and blue Huffy bicycle, a bike pump, and some deodorant. Once outside, he aired up the tires and rode off. His phone pinged about 5 miles from the Walmart near 14,955 East 1600th Street in Macomb. The area was searched, but no clues to his whereabouts have been found. Unfortunately, as of 2024, Eric has not been found, and this case remains unsolved. Jared Michael McColloch was born on May 24, 1990. In November 2023, 33-year-old Jared was the father of a 14-year-old son living in Marion, Louisiana. However, his son lived with his mother in Salem, Illinois, so on the evening of November 4, 2023, Jared decided at the last minute to go visit him. He packed his truck, including his 2 dogs, and began the 8-hour drive. At 1:30 in the morning on November 5th, he was caught on surveillance cameras at Huck's store on West Main Street, buying some gas and an energy drink. This is where things get strange. He then stopped at a Phillips 66 in Central City at 5:30 a.m. and bought $15 worth of gas. At 8:30 a.m., he is caught on surveillance over an hour away in Camry. At 9:27 a.m., there is an incoming call from his ex, which pinged in Grayville. Between 10:24 and 10:41 a.m., there are 3 calls with his ex that ping off the Mount Carmel Tower. At 10:57 a.m., there is another call from his ex, and his phone pings off the Allendale Tower. The next morning at 8 a.m., his 2020 white GMC Sierra truck is found abandoned in Vincennes, Indiana. While the truck had GPS and OnStar, the location was turned off. The truck was not kept for evidence and was instead turned back over to his mother, whose name it was in. Searches around the area were performed, but no clues to his whereabouts were found. They also searched the river, but once again, nothing. Some speculate that he may have been carjacked in Salem, but that's hard to imagine considering his 2 large dogs. So what really happened to Jared? I read he was lost, which makes sense considering the number of calls with his ex. However, could he have been lured to the location where his truck was found? Unfortunately, as of April 2024, Jared has not been found, and this case remains unsolved. Shana Marie Jaros was born the oldest of 4 children on July 16, 1977, to parents Dwayne and Debbie. In late October 1995, 18-year-old Shana had just moved into her own apartment and was working as a nursing assistant at Golden Manor Nursing Home. She was described as a kind, loving girl who was said to have no enemies. On October 31, 1995, Shana took her coworker and neighbor's daughter, 7-year-old Ronnie Brown, trick-or-treating. Afterward, Shana hosted a small Halloween get-together with some friends. Those friends were her roommate, Tanya Gilmore, Tanya's boyfriend, Jason Carver, and one of her 5 neighbors, Billy Malloy. Around 9:30 p.m., her father stopped by with Shana's younger brother to trick-or-treat, didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and left. After playing cards for most of the night, her friends left around midnight and would sadly never see Shana alive again. At 6:50 a.m., the owner of the apartments, Elsie Mae Delahunt, noticed Shana's door open. She called out for her, but received no response, so she stuck her head inside to make sure everything was okay. However, to her shock, she saw Shana fully clothed, covered in blood, and lying on the ground, partially covered by a quilt. She ran out of the apartment and called the police. The police could find no signs of forced entry, which means Shana might have known her killer and let them in willingly. A neighbor reported hearing scuffling coming from her apartment around 4:46 a.m., but never saw anyone leave. An autopsy found no signs that she had been sexually assaulted, and she had been stabbed multiple times in what would be considered an overkill. It was estimated that her death occurred around 4 a.m. Her 3 friends at her apartment that night were questioned and ruled out as suspects. More than 200 pieces of evidence were collected, but none have ever led to a suspect. Unfortunately, as of 2024, this case remains unsolved.